I'm Tim Ventura, here with inventor and independent researcher Paul Price. Paul's with us this evening to talk about a variety of interesting projects he's worked on, in addition to some new theories that he has about the underlying physics that might lead to anti-gravity and field effect propulsion. Paul, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly. Thank you, Tim.
Great. Well, to start out with, I've talked to you in the past a few times, and one of the things that had intrigued me was a vortex theory of gravity that you had. Could you tell me a little bit about kind of the basis for this idea and how it might better manipulate gravity than some of the other theories that are out there?
Well, first of all, what it does is that it defines gravity instead of being a force per se as an effect of interactions between mass itself and the energy field that permeates the universe. Some call it the vacuum field, others call it the zero-point energy, others call it ether. But it all roughly boils down to, mainly the same thing, that it's an energy field that permeates the universe and collectively with matter, as matter spinning creates a vortex which causes convergent and divergent polaric fields of energy to create what we call gravity.
Well, I'm following you a little bit in terms of kind of the modern ether theories. And I guess just for the audience, I should preface it by saying this isn't the older style theory where they were talking about the Earth and the sun hanging in big, vat of water or something. The modern ether is a very unique idea, but it crops up all over the place in physics. It just tends to be that physicists hate to call it that. But so you're actually thinking that this can be manipulated into a vortex of sorts, then?
Well, basically, yes. And what happens is even one of my very close friends that maybe later on you might want to talk to later yourself, Tim, Stan Dale, he has even proposed himself in some of the works that he has sent to me directly that, first of all, gravity is a combination of converging and diverging electrical fields. Hence, where my theory comes in, basically, is that it kind of goes a step further than that. It states that energy itself in a see if I can use the right terminology here. And virtual randomness permeates the universe. In the theory that I'm currently working on and the paper that I'm working on for my current project for STAVE 2005, I go as far as proposing that even matter itself is a byproduct effect of interactions between subatomic particles, atomic particles, molecular structures, all inside that virtual energy field. What you do with that field later on, basically, is that since it is interactive byproduct effect that creates gravity, that with matter, if you can tune into the field itself, being able to either A, extract energy therefrom to manipulate the wave band or the wave forms within the energy field itself, or even better yet, controlling the energy field itself by using vortex phenomenon, you have a way of then dealing with gravitational control. You're not per se controlling gravity, Tim. Gravity as being an effect, you're controlling the energy field that helps to create the effect. And hence, as an after effect, you're controlling gravity.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Well, what kind of control do you think this might offer? Would this be incredibly large-scale spaceship-type control, or is it more along the lines of, for initial prototypes, something kind of like the lifters, where it's a little bit smaller but has potential?
Well, if you're dealing with lifters, or even if you're dealing with the concepts I'm currently working on and designs for spinning superconductors, what you're dealing with is that you're creating a mini magnetic vortex that creates a negative pressure wave within the energy field. That within itself causes the energy field to fluctuate. that can actually create a lifting mechanism. And the higher yield that you use in the pressure wave or the negative pressure wave, the more the buckling occurs, hence the more the levitation. And it's pretty much equal to the amount of energy input that you're inputting into it to draw or to cause it. Are you there?
Yeah. And so,
Okay.
in terms of
Yep.
the output, then this could be really flying cars, then, for the commercial application, I guess, or beyond, or even into space with, conventional energy sources, perhaps.
And that's one thing, one of the reasons why I don't like using the term anti-gravity per se is that gravity itself is a byproduct effect. If you look at it from that perspective, then what you can do from there is that no matter how far you are away from a center of, or a body center of mass, if you're dealing with controlling the energy field that creates that effect, you can go from point A to point B in the universe, riding off a virtual shock wave of energy, and have that energy be able to be the mechanism to take you from those 2 points in space.
Oh, okay. Well,
Okay?
would this facilitate maybe faster than light travel, or do you think it would just be a very efficient way of traveling at kind of sublight velocities?
Theoretically, you're creating a shock wave. It could theoretically do faster than light travel, depending upon what kind of energy source you're using and whether or not you can tap directly into the 0-point field as the way not only to create the wave, but also to sustain the effect.
Well,
And that's no, go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'll let you finish because I was going to follow up with kind of a follow-on to that. I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
And the thing about it is, if you do that, it's sort of like taking, how should I put it, the best analogy for this would be like a surfer riding a wave. Basically, you see how a surfer uses the wave's own energy to take him from point A to point B, like let's say from the middle of the ocean back to back to land. You would use that same analogy, but what you would do is create an energy effect that could actually sustain that wave, that shock wave you're riding off of. And once you reach to another point, you can actually slow the wave down, like you get next to another body.
Oh,
like let's say
okay.
a star or another mass, planet per se.
Yeah.
You can slow down the wave and actually go into a stasis wave point where you can actually go around, enter the atmosphere of the object, and then come back again.
Well, this description sounds a little bit like some of the concepts, and some of the things that I've been working with are a little bit different, but I think the underlying concepts are very similar in terms of maybe almost a gravitational transistor. You're calling it a shock wave. I like to use the transistor analogy, although obviously it's farther from what's really going on. But maybe the idea would be using a small amount of energy to control a much larger flow of energy, and then kind of tapping off that for propulsion. And one of the things that had initially drawn me to your work was your interest in the vortex theories, because I've seen a lot of results here, there, and everywhere, and they're rare, admittedly, and I haven't been able to distinguish them from like just an electric motor. But at the same time, we have these rotating magnetic field generators that appear every now and then to just create tons and tons of lift out of nowhere. And no one's really been able to explain why. And again, I don't know why electric motors don't do this, but under the right conditions, it appears that these things tap into a vortex of some type. So what I guess I'm wondering is, if you were sitting down to build a large-scale device, and if budget wasn't an issue, what would be the device that you'd build? What would be the killer prototype that you could say, look, to the entire world, look at this, it works, this is the next step in space travel?
Well, actually, I would build something small, something that's not really that complicated to do, but a proof of concept prototype that could actually incorporate all the basic functions needed to prove the theory valid. Number one, you could build a prototype with a spinning what I call a floating armature. And that floating armature would be basically a superconductive ring, and do so in. Hold it there. Let me plug in my phone for a second, if you don't mind.
Oh, no problem at all.
Okay, sorry about the interruption here. Sounds like my phone's about to go out, so I just wanted to make sure to take care of that right now. But basically, you could do it, I would say, for under $2,000. You wouldn't even need a superconductive ring to do it. But you would need something that would have pretty clear flow to where you could have a flow of current between the two metal pieces that are spinning to create the magnetic vortex. And to me, if I could show how that would work and how that could fluctuate the field itself, creating levitation, then it would open up quite a few avenues, not only in space travel, but if we find a way to create a conduit where we can draw energy from the vacuum field, then we would have the ability to draw an unlimited amount of energy potential from the vacuum field. Hence, to put it in layman's terms, we would have the ability to have what we would like to call free energy.
Sure,
sure. And that within itself, not only is the propulsion concept an interesting side issue to look at, but also the fact that we're looking right now at trying to find what sources of non-polluting energy that we can actually use instead of fossil fuels now, since not only is our fossil fuels running out per se, but also the pollutants that are being emitted by fossil fuel burning cars and engines themselves are doing, as we all know, we've read all this in the news lately, that it's actually doing damage to our environment.
Yeah, there are many things like this.
Go ahead, please.
Well, I just read a report that supported some of the issues concerning oil, and so I'm just kind of agreeing with the idea that our time is limited here, and I think even the most the largest, most conservative oil companies are starting to be they're starting to look at other alternative sources, but the problem is they have such a distance to travel. They're so many years behind, and so devices like yours, and the associated theories are something that, not just corporations, but the entire world can look at and say, look, people have been out there doing this work. Pay attention to it. It's good stuff, and it will produce results. And so I think one of the things that makes interviews like this important is that it allows you to share not only kind of your thoughts and ideas as to, how to build these devices, but also kind of some insight into that the other part of the mind that allows you to create ideas like this, and hopefully other people can pick that up and take it from there.
Well, let me share something with the audience right now, and with people who will be coming on the website, maybe wondering about this, may not have had an opportunity to read much about anti-gravity theory or even counter-gravitational effect. What causes a person such as myself and others, this is my opinion though, and I hope you don't mind me stating this.
Oh, not at all. Go ahead.
And what causes myself, and I'll just use myself as an example, and to basically want to go and do the research into this. Number one, it came to a point in my life where I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to fly to the moon. I wanted to go where my heroes went, Neil Armstrong and the rest of them. In 1988, all of that came crashing to the ground per se, and this is not a negative thing. Actually, it helped me refocus my efforts. I was going to join the Air Force. The day that I was going to join the Air Force, I found out that I had epilepsy, which blew my Air Force career out of the water, and then hence my astronaut career.
Oh, okay.
But one of the good things that happened throughout that whole process, mind you, is that it gave me the chance to sit back and start to decide what can be the one thing I could do that would make a difference and maybe help, maybe not myself, but maybe somebody else who may be in the future in the same boat that I am, to be able to go and do what they want to do, what they want to accomplish. And I was working at the Johnson Space Center in the cafeteria at one time, and they were trying their darndest to get me to go to college back then. And I sat there, and I didn't want to work in the cafeteria. I just wanted to go to work at of all places, the engineering department, but didn't have a degree. And I so desperately wanted to open up space for everybody, not just only for myself, but also for other people who may have disabilities and all, give them the opportunities to do what only a select few people would have the chance or the ability to do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and
and I was just going to make this as brief as possible. Basically, Tim, why I came up with the idea was that, number one, I saw a need there. And that's what everybody has got to see, is that you have to find a need. Once you find that need, you then go from that point on to try to find a solution to the need.
Well,
go ahead, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just, I never realized that you'd had to overcome this many challenges to be able to do the work you've done, and I really applaud that. You've done amazing work, and the stuff that I've read that you've written has been, you've put tons and tons of thought into it, and you've been able to draw conclusions that a lot of other people just would have been stuck with. They would have said, well, I don't know where to go from here, and you found a path forward. So I really applaud that effort.
You know what people have to learn to do, unfortunately? Too many people who are in academia, and God bless them, I love them to death, but the only problem that they have is that they're taught a certain way to think. And they're in a box, and they're in that box type thinking, like that. Should I take a chance to reach out further outside of myself to be able to maybe make the big discoveries and the big solutions to all these great problems? And they're so afraid to do it now because, they don't want to be ostracized or anything else. And hence comes a guy like me, basically from the outside, has a different way of looking at it, knows the science, but will look at it and say, you were taught this way, but, you might want to look at it from a different perspective. And that's what I'm trying to get people to do, is to think outside of the box for a while, and try to use their intelligence that God gave them to be able to make some, great leaps, not only in science, but in the arts and in other things.
Well,
in other words, have no limitations.
Yeah, speaking of which, in terms of great leaps, you'd mentioned a ring for your device, and
yes.
You'd said that it doesn't have to be superconducting, but it is or it isn't magnetic.
Because you have to create a magnetic vortex. It's a conduit, basically. What you're doing is that you're wanting to get the streaming energy to come from the vacuum and then make it more into a virtual type energy that can be manipulated and used.
Oh, okay.
And that's what a vortex will do. If your listeners want to do research, and I know you have yourself probably, Tim, read about Victor Schauberger, correct?
Yeah, definitely.
His work on vortices, even way back in the 30s and 40s, were quantum leaps and the understanding of how vortex energy works. And I would encourage anyone to be able to sit down and read, I think, Colin Coates' books on Victor Schauberger, as well as others that wrote books on what Schauberger did, and even some of the trials he went through, trying to get this stuff off the ground, and how he inspired not only myself, but quite a few others in their research dealing with vortex phenomena. Go ahead, please.
Oh, well, it's amazing that, I've heard Nick Cook and several other people reference Victor Schauberger. Now, one of the things that had caused me some confusion in the past was whether or not his designs applied to just energy or just aerodynamics and fluid flows, or if there was a crossover there. And the reason it's confusing is, I think the way that it's written up, I've seen books that have covered it from different angles, and they're never really clear. Could you clarify that to some degree? Is air capable of moving one of these systems in terms of vacuum energy?
Actually, it is. That's one way that it does, especially in an atmosphere. It would be able to do it because you're having a negative pressure that you're creating virtually by the vortex that you're creating with the system. But what he found out, and from the research I've done about what Victor Schauberger did, is that he found out that he had side effects that he didn't anticipate when he first, did his research, and a lot of them were electromagnetic in nature.
Oh, so his initial research started out being aerodynamic, and it led to a better understanding of the electromagnetic vortices.
And it wasn't only air, it was aerodynamics or vortices in the electromagnetic spectrum that he initially looked at. He looked at how water. Are you there? I had to cut in and out. I do apologize.
Oh, that's no problem at all.
Okay. He had actually watched how the vortices in water worked and was able to apply what he observed to his designs with aerodynamic systems and electromagnetic later on.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, it was kind of a step-by-step process that led him to what he discovered, and what unfortunately, the Nazis in World War II actually had, incorporated right near the end of the war.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in a way, that gives it some credibility because, they were able to do a lot of really interesting engineering projects that Western science simply wouldn't touch. And I think part of that was just because they were desperate and they were willing to consider alternative science. And it seems to me that every instance that I've seen where alternative science was given a chance, it tends to come through. And admittedly, there have been a lot of people perpetrating scams in free energy over the years. But in terms of the propulsion side of things, I think it's things are a little bit more honest. It's harder to fake things, and I think people realize that. And the Germans certainly were able to get some things done. They had the world's first jet engine, and at the time, that was alternative science. This idea that you could burn the air in a certain way and get the engine RPMs up to such enormous speeds. So the vortex theories along those lines, really tie into this in terms of this stuff is beyond high tech. This is, the technology of the 22nd century, not the 21st. And so I guess in that context, it's definitely something that I'm sure people are going to want to find out more about. Do you have any notes for them in terms of things to look for or when they're testing or experimenting?
Well, I will send you some information. I've got a few websites that they can go to look up information on Schauberger, and you can post those on your website later on when I'm able to email them to you, Tim. And also look up www.spandeo.com. And Spandeo has some interesting work, especially on the work done by Thomas Townsend Brown and his electric flying capacitors. Thomas Townsend Brown, a little bit about him from my own research that I've done. He was able to show how flying disc capacitors using what is affectionately known as the Biefeld-Brown effect. He was able to use capacitors as what I consider from my own work as tuners that were able to tune into the zero-point field. And his capacitors did, in effect, what my theory states about fluxating the electrical field around them in a given dimension of space.
Oh, okay.
The only problem with Thomas Townsend Brown's work, unfortunately, is that certain people did give him credit, but a lot of the work was done by the military, and he didn't get as much credit as he should have before his death. And he was an unsung hero, in my opinion, in the electrogravitic and anti-gravity field.
Definitely.
And that's another thing that I'd like to see your listeners and the listeners to this interview, as well as the others who may be searching and wanting to get more information on, check out Thomas Townsend Brown also.
Sure. Well, I've done, like, the lifters are actually Biefeld-Brown device, and so I've done a lot of work with Brown's technology, and, it works. There's no doubt about it. The only worry is the efficiency, and that's one of the things that drew me away from that towards a lot of the vortex ideas, is the potential efficiency that they offer seems to be orders of magnitude greater. And so it's interesting to hear that you support this also in terms of when things rotate, anti-gravity is more likely to be more massive in scale, maybe.
Well, and you have a magnification process when you have the vortices. Whereas with the bifield ground effect, all you're doing basically is finding ways to tune into that particular given space and field that's around you, that energy field that's right there in your immediate vicinity. Vortices, though, and a lot of work that's been done, I think, by, and don't get me to pronounce this man's name, even though he and I have been in contact, Gene Putklinoff. I just want
Oh,
to make sure I
yeah.
got that correct, right?
Yeah, well, there are 4 or 5 pronunciations. Yeah, Eugene Podkletnov. Yeah,
Okay.
I've heard it 3 or 4 different ways myself, so.
Well, even he and the work that was done by Dr. Ning Lee indicates that vortices actually can have a magnitude up into infinity in both directions.
as an
Go ahead, please.
as an interesting note, I'd mentioned to you on the phone earlier that I had an email from her about a year and a half ago stating that she had encountered 11 kilowatts, or about 15 horsepower worth of this anti-gravity or AC gravity effect that she had talked about, and that was interesting. And as a follow-up, it's beginning to be known that she had disappeared for a time. Well, I actually was able to track down, the location of where my emails to her were actually going. And as it turns out, they're being read, I don't know if it's by her, but someone is reading them from West Point. And I thought that was really interesting.
Well, you got to understand, too, the military is playing a lot of cards in this for good reason. I mean, one things that we have to deal with when we're dealing with energies of this magnitude and the even theoretical possibilities of tapping into these energies. Hal Puthoff, and it was quoted in the book The Hunt for Zero Point in an interview that Nick Cook did with Hal Puthoff, and I've had a chance to meet the man, and I think he's one of the best men I've ever met. He's a really good doctor and a very good man on top of that too. But in a statement he made to Nick Cook, and the empty space that would fill the dimensions of a normal coffee cup, you have enough potential energy there to boil the Earth's oceans over twice over. So if you look at that, and if you do that exponentially within a given area, we have more than enough potential energy in the space where we live that if we found a way to tap into that source, would we ever need fuels anymore? 10. Would we ever need coal-burning engines? Would we ever need diesel-fueled engines? Would we even need to be hooked up to the power grid? The answer to that is, and it's affirmed, a no.
Definitely. Well,
go ahead, please.
Well, what I was going to say is we're almost out of time for this evening, although this definitely sounds like something that we should continue at a later date.
Sure.
But one thing I would like to get out is your email address.
I've got 3 of them, okay, and I hope your listeners don't mind me coming out with 3 different email addresses. If you can't reach me at one, reach me at one of the other 2.
Oh, okay.
First one is my Yahoo address, which is, there should be a link there at the Antigravity website. Am I correct, Tim?
Yeah, I actually have a link up. I still have, in the news section, I still have a link to the documentation that you sent me also. Okay,
great then. It's, and for those who can't get to the website, for whatever reason or may not, I'll give you my Yahoo address. Paul Price, all one word, Paul Price, 1968-2003 at yahoo.com. And the second one is Paul dash, it's a straight dash between Paul dash Price at iwon.com. And the third is my nickname, Rick Price, 120 at hotmail.com.
Oh, okay. So the first one is let me see. Can you read that off for me once again?
Okay, Paul Price, all one word, it's all bunched together. Paul Price, 1968, 2003, at yahoo.com.
Oh, okay, okay. I was a little unsure on that one. So the listeners can reach you at any one of those for more information about your work, or to get in touch with you about collaborating on projects, or just learning more about, some of the ideas and technologies you've been working with. And again, I sincerely appreciate your time this evening. It's been great talking to you, and I hope to pick it up again in the near future.
Hey, Tim, do you mind if I could plug something real quickly here?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. And February of next year at the University of New Mexico is going to host the next Space Technology Applications International Forum 2005 conference. I will be doing a paper on gravity there. If any of you would like, you're more than welcome to come. It's going to be held at the Albuquerque Hilton Hotel, okay?
Great. Well, thanks again, and have a great weekend, Paul.
Oh, hey, and you have a great Memorial Day too, and to the rest of you also.
Thanks.
Goodbye.